Cycle ride from Plymouth to Clifff and a walk from Clifff to Wembury in 2 parts. The Southwest Coastal Paths UK. Well, it's another beautiful day in Plymouth, and according to the papers the earth is burning and we're all doomed and gloomed. So I think we're going to take a walk along some of the coastal path from Mountbatten and just get out of the city for a while and be at one with the world. It's a shame that in the middle of the summer, the Hoe is incredibly quiet for what should be a vibrant city with a lot of history. My ice cream friends aren't here, and it's 1 o'clock in the afternoon in late July, and it's an incredibly hot summer. So there's something seriously wrong with the infrastructure of Plymouth and the way it's run. Well, today I've decided to go along the Southwest Coastal Path, heading towards Mountbatten, and see where I end up. Well, it's late July 2018 and I've decided to leave Plymouth and head along the Southwest Coastal Path going east, and you get some beautiful views of old boats with massive history. And Plymouth used to have a wealth of history. It still has, but it's just been forgotten about, unfortunately, and that's a shame. That's frustrating. Well, it's another beautiful hot day and the weather's too nice to be stuck indoors. You need to be out on your bike getting exercise, getting irons in the air, from the air, and be at one with the world on a very hot day. The hottest summer on record in the UK, actually, as the weather in some areas of the country has been reaching 93 degrees during the week, which is almost unheard of in recent years. Don't remember that since 1976. With some stunning views and fantastic scenery all over the southwest. Just outside Plymouth, you have some fantastic examples of that. Every broken down boat tells a story. I wonder what the story is to this one. So in 1976, I left home and joined the RAF at 17. Signed on for 6 years, ended up staying in for 12 years. And during that time, I was just being thrown around left, right and centre and getting very disillusioned with things. So I got posted to Anglesey and found they got a mountain rescue team. And I applied for the mountain rescue, and to my amazement I managed to get in. They offered me a full-time posting as a driver, and I signed on for 3 years, ended up staying in for 5 years, and it was probably one of the best paid jobs I ever had. It was about pushing myself to the limits mentally and physically, and knowing what I'm all about and learning an awful lot about yourself and other people and working as a team. And you learn that when you're working as a team in those sort of examples, and it goes through life in general, you're only as good as the slowest member of the team. And that's why I question things at every level now. Because straight from mountain rescue I went to VIP driving in Belgium for 3 years. And I was listening to war politics in the back of the car, which made me question things now at every level. When I left the Air Force, I did HND in media, film and television, a BTEC in photography, which is what I did as a schoolboy. I did A-level photography at 16, and it just failed on the photo history side rather than the practical side, which I passed. And so when I left the Air Force and studied media for 4.5 years, had the life experience to back up what I'm doing now. And this is definitely the biggest mountain I'm having to climb, especially being based in Plymouth, because it's a city where everybody's put down and they lose their soul over years, and it's very hard to keep your soul. And it's because I've got a lot of mental strength that's kept me motivated and driven there. But it's a bizarre place to live. I'm sorry to say that, but somebody's got to say it. So all paths lead to Hoe, and that's where I am at the moment. I'm at Hoe Lake, and I'll go around there, head towards Mountbatten. And Mountbatten is where Lawrence of Arabia was as a corporal in his last posting, before he died on his motorbike, and all sorts of stories come about that, but I'm not into conspiracy theories, and it could have been any number of reasons as to why he died. But he was the only person that was in touch with Arabia and the Middle East, and to be quite honest, present politics have just made a mess of everything. Beautiful landscapes, beautiful boats. Just around the corner you've got Richard Branson's Virgin of Atlantic, which has been moored and kept by somebody who salvaged it from Europe, I think, but you can't get access to it because it's on private land. So that's just a story. This little sun-baked meadow usually has some Very rare medieval sort of sheep in here, which is nice to see. They're not in here at the moment, but they'll probably be in late afternoon, so I might try and catch them on the way back. So just over the back there on the river, you can see the top of the boat, and that's Virgin Atlantic, Richard Branson's old boat. So if you're a pubby person, which I'm not, you can come to this pub, which is built in 1799, which is now called the Royal Oak, which is just over the south coast path from Hugh Lake, following it to the east. In this beautiful little meadow here. So if you follow this road, you come to a dead end, which is Mountbatten. And that's where Lawrence of Arabia is based, and also after the Second World War where the flying boats were based. So it must have been very noisy listening to the flying boats take off in Plymouth Sound and watch them at the same time. That would have been nice. Panoramic view is steeped in history. It's inspirational to everyone. Plymouth was a very pro-Brexit city, yet it doesn't reflect very much on its very important history that helped to establish the UK. In fact, the city only seems to be interested in the war politics and the war machine that left its mark on Plymouth and the bombed out city during the Second World War. Right, I'm going to walk some of the coastal path now and give you some of the history on Plymouth as I'm walking. This is the Southwest Coastal Path, and that's the marker for it. So over in the background you've got Drake's Island, which is used for military training for quite a few years. Then it became a television set for a television production company for children's television. And now it's a nature reserve, and there's very little they can do with it because they keep trying to put planning permission to put hotels and things like that up there. But there's always obstacles in the way, and it's been like that for the last 20 years. McCluskey owned it for a while. And further back you've got Devonport, and you've got a monument there to Scott, Henry Falcon Scott, the explorer who died on the expedition to the South Pole. And look at me a minute. And there's reference to it from his diaries there, making a statement about taking risks and being prepared to take the consequences for your risks. And that's what life's all about. If you don't take risks, you don't go anywhere, you just become trapped, and that's what's happening in Plymouth at the moment. A lot of people aren't being allowed to explore themselves and take the risks to develop themselves and move the city forward. In fact, a lot of the lettering from the diaries have just been left to disappear, and the monument hasn't been looked after properly, and yet it's very historical and very important, so it's an embarrassment that it's been allowed to get run down. And many years ago, Napoleon Bonaparte was brought into Plymouth Sound before he was taken to St Helena. He'd been in exile for many years after losing a few wars in Europe, and he handed himself over to the British, who then moved him to St Helena, so he could almost be imprisoned and kept quiet for the rest of his life. And he died there from poisoning of some sort or other. Probably lead poisoning from the wallpaper in the building, in the house he was living in. But also, like everything else in those situations, there's all sorts of reasons why he could have died. So this is Jenny Clifff, a great lookout area. And then in August, we have a fireworks show coming from this area here, which is the British National Fireworks Show, which has been going for probably about 15 years now. And that's very spectacular to see and draws a lot of people in. At the moment on the Hoe, which is high ground, you've got preparations going up for MTV, and they've been running that big music festival for 2 days in the summer every year for about 5 or 6 years now. And that breakwater there is also where part of Mountbatten, where Lawrence of Arabia was based and where the flying boats would set off from. Just over there you've got Mount Edgecombe, which is held by the National Trust. Well worth a visit and really nice to see. And further over in the distance there you've got Corsands. And that's the breakwater, which is a mile out from Plymouth. I think it was built by prisoners of war or something like that. Don't correct me on it, because I might be wrong. So the natural side of England is beautiful, and I think there's a lot more land over here than what they let on when they say that everything's become overdeveloped. It's only in cities where everything's become intense. So Charles Darwin lived in Plymouth, and he was based in Plymouth Sound before he went off to discover the origins of the species. in South America. So I'm now on the southwest coastal path, heading in the direction of Wembury, and I don't think I'll get there today because it's 7 kilometres away, and it's up and down valleys and hills and bits and pieces, and I need to save some energy because I'm off to somewhere special at the weekend in 2 days' time. So under Plymouth's present management, it's become an all or nothing city. For many years it was pubs and clubs, and then you had all the trouble that came with that, the corruption and the crime, the drug pushers and people like that, which were easy targets for criminalising in this city. And then it became all restaurants, and the restaurants are struggling, and now it's all student accommodation. So I like the vibrancy of students coming in, and I like students from all over the world, which also gets rid of the blockhead mentality of the Plymouthians in some areas. But at the same time, it means the city now collapses in the summer, and a lot of the trade in the city is suffering because of that. It's there seems to be no logic in the way the city is run, and that's frustrating, not just to me as a creative person in the city, but to all the tradespeople that are working there and struggling. And some of them are on benefits as well, subsidising their jobs, especially in places like the Barbican, where they're subsidising their jobs with benefit backups. I'd like to see monuments put up, proper bronze monuments put up for the people I've already mentioned, because they're inspirational and a major part of the UK's history. Forget Brexit. If you're pro-Brexit, you should be putting up these monuments to these heroes that made the UK, instead of just being a tribal point of view of wanting to be being in control of the UK. And that's full of double standards of behaviour anyway, where the powers that be can behave the way they want to, and everybody else has to abide by a different code of rules. So nature and respecting nature, especially in one of the hottest summers on record in the UK, is all important, and I think it's about time that we started preserving the landscape. I started planting a lot more trees to oxygenate the planet and help to cool it down, and start thinking about the planet as a living thing and respecting it. But there again, as humans, we don't respect anything, do we? A lot of us smoke too much, drink too much, and are aware of the consequences on our own bodies, never mind the planet's. So if we treat ourselves like that, especially places that I know, then how can you expect people to treat the planet with respect? As a boy, I used to look at people promoting the UK, and it was always that Churchillian effect of a heavy cigar smoker, drunken alcohol, massively drunken alcohol. I believe Churchill was a bottle of whiskey a day alcoholic, manic depressive, and I'm quite convinced that the reason he got away with what he did it was by coincidence or luck of the draw, because he was so irrational that other people couldn't relate to him. And that's probably why the UK is one of depression instead of hope and inspiration. I don't like to be negative. I'm not trying to be negative, it's just from what I've seen. And I don't read, like I said before in other videos, I don't read conspiracy theories. Everything I talk about comes from life experience and what I've seen myself, and the way I see other people act and interrelate with each other. And I love life. My work is all about seeing the best of people and being at one with the world and living a full and exciting, vibrant life. That music in here is MTV getting ready for tomorrow. And there should be some good bands there. Pete Tong's going to be there, as well as the band Bastille. But I won't be paying to go in, mainly because I don't like the over-security system that goes in, and there's a strange atmosphere in the way everything's controlled in Plymouth compared with other places, and I've been all over Europe. I've not seen it quite as intense as it is in Plymouth, and it puts me off going. So if it puts me off, it probably puts an awful lot of other people off going as well. So in 2 years' time, Plymouth will be celebrating 400 years of its connection with Plymouth, Massachusetts in America. And the building, or rebuilding the old museum and art gallery into an international centre for the arts, and history of Plymouth museum, and it's going to be called the Box. Let's hope that people just don't go to the Box and then go out of the city again, and if they put these monuments on the Hoe, then it helped to draw people in to see them. All they got on the Hoe really is the war monument, Sir Francis Drake, who's a pirate anyway, and a swashbuckling pirate that was breaking the law left, right and centre, which probably sums up a lot of areas that I know, and the Beatles' bums, which is, to me, is supposed to be put there in fun by one of the councillors, but to me it's a total embarrassment. Because it's made out of plastic, I believe, the little set from the Beatles lookalike bums rather than the real Beatles, and it's set in the grass, so whenever it rains they get surrounded by mud, and to have a proper monument to the Beatles there would have been a lot more sense. As already mentioned, if you have bronze statues, you're going to attract people in, and you can get local creative people to build those, and I don't see why they can't get National Lottery funding. They seem to get funding for everything else, so if they built those, it'd really draw people in a lot more, I think. I love to go wandering along the mountainside, and as I go I love to sing out a tune with my camera on my back. Follow-ree, follow-raw, listen to the music. I think there should be a reduction in price for Plymothians to go to these concerts with MTV in the city. Even at Land's End, there's a reduction for the locals. If you go to Land's End, then car parking's free. So how quickly history moves on. Just imagine 400 years ago you'd have tall ships here, getting ready to sail out to the Americas and discover Australia as well. All over the world, in fact. When Britain was ruthless, reckless, and pushing boundaries across the world. And the British also gave fatal viruses to the South American tribes when they went over there as Christians. I'm not anti-royalist because I like royals, but you've got to realise that the second generation royals are Russians and Germans. So when you're on about Brexit and waving the flag for the UK, even the royal family aren't truly British. In fact, the only real British are the Celts and some people in Cornwall, DNA-wise. So that tells me that Brexit is all about a tribal mentality, which has become incredibly racist and sexist in its view as well. And also when you fly the flag, the Union flag for the UK, the Union flag is only apparently meant for shipping, and the flag of St George is the British flag. But somebody pointed out to me that even St George isn't British. Hundreds of houses across the city, all leading their own little lives and telling different stories. I was in Monte Carlo last year, and Princess Yachts had a shop on the waterfront there, which was nice to see. So Plymouth Breakwater, an incredible piece of engineering, building a structure like that up from the bottom of the sea. It must have cost a few lives, I would have thought. From Mountbatten you've got sailing training schools, and also at Mayflower in the Barbican in Plymouth. So Stadden Heights Defence, they've got an armoury at the top here, or a firing, or they used to have a firing range at the top of the hill. So now I'm heading in the direction of Fort Bobby-Sand. At the top of there you've got a firing range, and Bobby-Sand used to be a diver training school of international class, and I did a paddy diving course there many years ago. And I believe for a while it was an adventure training centre. I'm not sure if it still is or not. So when I did my paddy from Mountbatten, they used to have ribs down in the centre there in that little harbour. And we used to dive off the breakwater on the left hand side and used to come across the catfish. Road keeps me coming to your door. As a young boy, I was brought up in the country in Cheshire, and I used to love just going for long walks in the country and singing to myself. So here goes. The Lord above gave man an arm of iron, so he could do his job and never shirk. The Lord above gave man an arm of iron, but with a little bit of luck, you can have it all and not get hooked. If you're prepared to get out, it's beautiful. This is what life's all about, being at one with the world. Look over there. A land full of beautiful sea views. This has been a Chris Summerfield video 2018. You can contact me at ccsPhoto12@hotmail.com, and if you can help to sponsor my videos, you can PayPal me at ccsPhoto1@gmail.com. Thanks for watching the video. It's a lot.